Welcome to the Success Story Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Clary. On this podcast, I have candid interviews with execs, celebrities, politicians, and other notable figures, all who have achieved success through both wins and losses, to learn more about their life, their ideas, and their insights. I sit down with leaders and mentors and unpack their story to help pass those lessons on to others through both experiences and tactical strategy for business professionals, entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. Without further ado, another episode of the Success Story Podcast. Thanks again for joining me. Today, I'm sitting down with Bob Burg. If you don't know who Bob Burg is, a former top sales professional, highly sought after conference speaker, author. For over 30 years now, he's helped companies, sales leaders, their teams communicate value, sell at higher prices, less resistance. He's been named by the American Management Association as one of the top 30 most influential thought leaders in business, and is the author of a number of books in sales, marketing, influence, with total book sales approaching 2 million copies, probably much more than when I pulled the stat, including the most recent book, GoGiver, and the GoGiver, a Wall Street Journal Business Week bestseller, has sold over 950,000 copies since its release and has constantly stayed in the top 25 of business books bestseller lists. The book has been translated in 28 languages. It was rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of most motivational books ever written, and HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob, thank you so much. Such an honor to unpack your story, understand how you became the brand, the person, that you are right now over your career. So walk me through who is Bob Burg from the start and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, great to be with you, Scott. Thanks for having me. I began my business career as a broadcaster, actually. First as a sportscaster on a small radio station, and then a television news anchor on a small affiliate in a small ABC affiliate in the Midwestern United States. I wasn't really very good at it, and I wasn't long for that job, and I soon, I like to say, graduated into sales. The biggest issue I had was that I knew nothing about sales on a formal level. I had no training, didn't know anything about it, and the training for the company where I first worked was negligible. I really non-existent, actually. And so I had to figure out things for myself, which that's not me. I don't invent or create wheels, so I floundered. Because I didn't figure it out. Fortunately, I didn't have to, though, because I was in a bookstore and came across a couple of books on selling, which surprised me. Now, again, this is 40 years ago, and back then the prevalence of books on sales was nothing as it is now. But fortunately, in the bookstore I was in, there were two great books, a couple of classics. One was by Tom Hopkins and one was by Zig Ziglar. And I got those books and I studied them. I'd study them after work every day until the wee hours of the morning. And I'd read and highlight and take notes and dog-ear the pages and practice. And within a few weeks, my sales really began to soar. And what it really told me was that if you have a methodology, if you have a system for doing a thing that you may not have known how to do before, but if it's a good system and it's principle-based, you can be successful. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So that was very, very encouraging for me. To this day, I would define a system as simply the process for predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles. So the key is predictability. If by doing A, it's been proven that you'll get the desired results of B, then all you need to do is A and keep doing A and keep doing A, and eventually you'll get the desired results of B. So that, again, that's sort of how I began to learn selling. And from there, as part of selling, as you know, personal development really comes into play. So I started buying all the books that we hear about, and back then it was, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Think Rich, which those are still classics, which everyone should have in their library. The Magic of Thinking Big, Psycho-Cybernetics, As a Man Thinketh, and so forth. And I was just overwhelmed with this wonderful, not only business building, but just self-growth material. and really enjoyed it. So in time, I became sales manager of another company. And after a while, started teaching others how to do what was working for me and for my team, and eventually kind of morphed into a speaking business, which I approached, again, very systematically. I joined the National Speakers Association, and I learned from those who come before me and had a roadmap, a system for how to build a speaking business. And as you said, I've been doing that now for about 30 years.
And tell me something. So you're a very logical process-driven person. It makes a ton of sense. So when you write a book like The Go-Giver, I watched some of your speaking engagements where you're speaking about giving, abundance, mindset. This is all tying back to success, I'm assuming, in sales and in life and in other things. When you're the process that you've developed, I'm curious where that came from and how it differentiates and provides value to people when now there is just an absolute abundance of different sales books, novels, literature, some good, some not so good. Much more than, when you first started picking up those classics. And I have actually some of those on my shelf now, so I appreciate it. So what is a go-giver, and what does that mean?
Yeah, so and that's such a great question. A go-giver is basically someone who understands that shifting their focus, and this is really the key, shifting one's focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Now, understanding that not only is this a more fulfilling way of doing business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for reasons of some woo-woo, way out there type of reason or mystical, magical thinking. No, it's actually, again, very logical. It's very rational. When you think about it, right? When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on bringing value to others, making someone else's life better, helping solve their problems, helping them to attain what they need, what they want, what they desire, well, people feel good about you, right? People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in a relationship with you. They want to do business with you if you have something they want or need, and they want to refer you to others. And so, again, it's very rational. Now, I talk about rationale and logic and systems. I'm actually a very emotional guy, okay? But what we need to be able to do, and by the way, I'm an emotional person because I'm a human being. Mm-hmm. And as human beings, we're all emotional. We're all emotion-based. We'd like to think we're logical, right? And to a certain extent we are. But as human beings, we are very emotion-driven. We make major decisions based on emotion. Now, we back those up we back them up with logic, right? We rationalize, which I guess kind of means we tell ourselves rational lies to justify those emotional decisions. But no, I'm as emotional as anyone. The key is that we need to make sure to control our emotions, be the master of our emotions so they work for us rather than against us. Or as one of my great friends, Dondi Scumaci, puts it, she says, by all means, take your emotions along for the ride, but make sure that you are driving the car. Mm-hmm. In other words, we want our decisions to be logically based, okay? Even though emotions are certainly good to have with us because emotions bring wisdom with them as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Go-Giver itself is actually very logical when you think about it. And the 5 laws, the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity all play one along with the other very holistically. So it's not just 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 of them, but actually all 5. It begins with the giving of value. That focus on providing immense value to others as you're building the relationship, as you're cultivating that relationship, as you're following up and following through, and as you're in the selling process and the referral process. It's always about starting with value. And then compensation, which is about how many people's lives you touch with that value. And then influence, which is really nothing more than being able to have other people's interests at heart, understanding that, as Dale Carnegie said, in How to Win Friends and Influence People, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. Or as I often say when I speak at a sales conference, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet, right? Or because you need the money, or even because you're a really nice person. They're going to buy from you because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so, which is why we have to put their interest ahead of our own. And this is also why John David Mann, my awesome co-author and the lead writer of the team, why we say that money is simply an echo of value. Money is an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, meaning that the value must come first. The value comes first. The money is simply that you receive is simply a very natural and direct result of the value you've provided. The law of authenticity, law number 4, just says to show up as yourself. Be that same person. Be the person you are, and be so all the time. And law number 5, the law of receptivity, says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. It means, sure, we breathe out, which is giving. We also have to breathe in, which is receiving. And then it's not a matter of being a giver or a receiver. That's a treacherous dichotomy, that either or. No, you're a giver and a receiver. But it begins with the focus on giving value.
Do you find that more sales leaders are working in this light, or do you still find that sales is a very traditional, latent industry?
Well, I think it's both. I think more and more people are understanding, and as you said, there's a lot of good sales books out there. There's a lot of good books that teach us how to be better, more effective salespeople. And the good ones always talk about the fact that it's always about the prospect. It's not about us. Great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. It's never even about the product or service, as important as the product or service is. It's about the other person. It's about how they are going to benefit from that product or service. It's about touching the life of another human being. It's about making their life better just by their having you in it, as your product or service. And I think that's a message that a lot more people are getting. Of course, people are people. So there's always going to be those people who that's just, they learned a traditional way and that's just what they're going to do. But no, I think more and more, especially as buyers are in much more of a power position because of the knowledge that the internet supplies. They already know a whole lot. They still need the salesperson, but they already know a lot about the product or service. The salesperson is no longer primarily a conduit of information. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. They need to be a conduit of insight. They need to be an advisor. They need to be able to, but as far as the information goes, so no, I think it's changing a lot, and I think it's changing a lot for the better.
And let's, speaking of the value you're always offering, you're giving, and I 100% agree. All these 5 laws that you mentioned in your book, they seem very common sense when you lay them out like that, but I still believe that people still have to focus and understand how to actually action them, or else they may fall flat. If it's not the way, like you mentioned, they were trained, they may default to bad habits. So how do you give value?
Well, first of all, we need to understand what value really is. Because it's different from price, and a lot of people think they're the same. Price is a dollar figure, right? It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. It's the price of something, which, by the way, might be more than just the dollars. There's also price in terms of opportunity cost, price in terms of time, price in terms of potential aggravation, price in terms, right? But when we say price, we're talking the whole what it would cost a person to buy a certain thing. That's price. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth to someone, to another human being, that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad that they did, while you make a very healthy profit. Now, on a very basic level, an example might be the accountant who you, hire to do your taxes, and she charges you $1,000, just to name a round figure. That's her fee or her price, $1,000. But what value does she give you in exchange for this $1,000? Well, she, let's say through all her hard work, getting to know you, your business, what you're looking to accomplish, all her years of experience and so forth, she is able to save you $5,000 on your taxes. She also saves you countless hours of time. And she provides you with the security and the peace of mind of knowing it was done correctly. So she actually gave you well over $5,000 in value in exchange for a $1,000 fee or price. And that's just the intrinsic value that she has given you based on what an accountant does. That right there doesn't separate or distinguish her from anyone. So how do we, in a world in which the playing field has basically been leveled through technology and through advancement, how do we distinguish ourselves and, as you say, provide value, give value to others? And basically, we, the salesperson or the entrepreneur, we need to be that additional value. How? Well, there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to communicate that additional value, but they tend to come down to 5 what we call elements of value. And these elements of value are excellence, consistency, attention, empathy, and appreciation. And to the degree that we can communicate those 5, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or all 5 of them at every single touch point, well, that's the degree that we take competition and price out of the equation.
And I understand. So now you've provided that extra value so that you now have the one up on the playing field of all the other, for example, the accountants. You've added those value drivers. Now, how do you actually, once you have made those value drivers apparent, does the sale just happen because you have shown the intrinsic value plus you've added those 5 additional value drivers, or is, another principle in the book is influence? And you want to influence the individual to do what you're trying to do, which is to close a sale. How do you actually employ that influence on somebody who you're trying to sell to?
Well, you influence a person to the degree that you show them that you're able to effectively communicate why they're doing business with you is in their best interest. So if you look at influence on a surface level, mm-hmm. We could define it. We could define influence, again, very basically as simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. That is, by definition, influence. It's the definition. It's not its substance. It's not its essence. And this is the big difference maker. The essence of influence is pull. Pull as opposed to push, as in the saying, how far can you push a rope? Mm-hmm. The answer is not very far, at least not very fast or effectively, which is, why great influencers don't push, right? You never hear people say, wow, that Tom or that Mary, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. No, they'd say she has a lot of pull with people, not push. And so that's what influence is. It's pull. It's an attraction. It's magnetic. How do you do that, though? Well, you do that through placing that other person's interest first, asking yourself questions to make sure you're really facing the right direction, which is outward. For example, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals? How does it align with their wants, their needs, their desires? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it align with their values? What problems am I helping them to solve? How am I making their life better? How am I bringing them closer to happiness? Whatever it happens to be, whatever questions make sense. And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone in the process, now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment to our idea. And that is pull. That is influence.
And that it's entirely shifting I love it. Shifting the whole focus, the whole overarching theme is that shifting that focus again from that internal self focus to,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
The influence, the pull, the giving, like it's all like it's so simple. Just focus on them, and you will achieve exactly what you want. Now, when I look through like all the points in the GoGiver and some of the topics you talk about, and even some of the speeches you give on how do you make sense of this financially? How does this have an ROI attached to it? Well, you're just focusing on the person, and everything is now tailored to what the customer wants. Truly, not shoving it down, but again, everything you're doing is in line with what the customer actually wants to achieve. And it's just a mindset shift. It's just shifting your mind from what you care about to, wait, let me get what I care about by caring about what the customer wants. That's it.
Yeah.
Very, very. It's the whole ideology sort of lines up that way. One thing you speak about in the book is mentorship. I'm curious to know, because we spoke about all these different sales books when you were first going to sales. Now there's many, many more. So regardless of whether it's a book or a person, how do you find somebody that can guide you this way? Because not everybody can reach out to Bob Burg and jump on a call every time they want some help. So how do you find mentors that align with this ideology? Because I agree with this ideology, and I think it's the way to be as a salesperson.
Well, finding a mentor, is very helpful, because a good mentor can help cut your learning curve time by years. I think sometimes people get too attached to having to have that one magical mentor, that's going to change their lives. And that's not usually how it works. First of all, a mentor-protege relationship is just that. It's a relationship. So it happens over time. And we don't always know when that's going to happen and who that person is going to be. But a lot of people will kind of approach someone who they respect or they admire or what have you and say, hey, will you be my mentor? And, that's, excuse me, kind of counterproductive most of the time, because first, if you want this person to be your mentor, probably a whole lot of other people do as well. And they're all asking him to be their, be their mentor. And they don't, most people just don't have time to do that, on a consistent basis. But what you can do, which is very effective, is you could really approach almost anyone who's successful and say, I'm wondering, and if this is not something you have time to do or just something you just don't want to do, totally understandable. I'm wondering if I might ask you one or two very specific questions. Now, when you do that, you've distinguished yourself from practically everyone else. First, the way you've done it, you've shown respect. There's no entitlement. You realize you're asking this person to do something that is going to take up their valuable time, and they may not want to. And you gave them the out. You said, and that's totally understandable, right? And typically, when you give someone the out or back door, they're less likely to feel the need to take it, because you're making them feel comfortable. They know you're not going to waste their time. Then what you also did, which is very effective, is you asked. You said, I'd love to ask you, or may I ask you one or two very specific questions. This shows this person that, you're not just looking to pick their brain and, again, waste their time. It's some general, but instead that you have an agenda. And when I say have an agenda in this case, I mean that in a positive sense. In other words, you've thought this out. You've planned this out. This is going to be a productive session, and they respect that. They're much more likely to say, yeah, sure. We can take a few minutes, or what can I do, or what have you. And that's a great start. Now, you want to make sure that you don't ask them anything, the answer to which you could have discovered through an online search. You know what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that this is something that you would not be able to otherwise know. Otherwise, again, that it's a waste of their time. They're not going to respect that. They're going to, right? And then, don't take up a lot of their time. Just, and be totally respectful of it. At the end, let them know how much you appreciate it and how you look forward to applying their wisdom right away. And that if it's okay, I'll, check back every so often and just let you know and they'll say, sure, of course. Now, what I would do is that day, I would send a handwritten, personalized note of thanks, not a text, not an email, handwritten, personalized note of thanks. And just say, again, thank you so much for taking valuable time out of your day. Your wisdom is priceless. I look forward to applying it right away, and we'll keep in touch and let you know how things are going. Boom, best regards. Just a short, sweet note, handwritten, number 10, or regular envelope, regular stamp, send it out, what have you. Also, a nice touch is discover what their favorite charitable cause is, which you can do that by just searching them online and learning that, and then make a small donation. It doesn't have to be anything big, just a small donation in their name. They'll be notified of it, and you're not doing it to kiss up or anything, but only so, again, they understand that you get it, that you are totally respectful of the process. So you're the type of person who they want to mentor. They wanted it, right? So now maybe weeks later, you either email or call, let them know how things are going. You had a good success, or you had another question, and would it be all right? Whatever. And if in time a mentor-protege relationship is supposed to develop, it will. If not, it won't. It might be this person was there for one conversation, as will 3 or 4 other people be, and then you might meet someone who ends up being a real ongoing, who knows? We want to just, do it the right way without attachment to the results.
Very smart. Very, very, very smart. Those are good, very, very good strategies. I've never heard those strategies before, so I like that a lot. I love when I hear like something new on this show. A lot of people speak about mentorship, but those are very, very clever strategies, and I think they're very smart. I want to ask some rapid fire before we end off today, just about some quick questions. But before I go off and we close out, is there anything that I didn't ask about GoGiver or what you're working on now that's meaningful to you that you wanted to bring up?
Well, we have 4 books in the series. 3 of them are parables. Anyone who goes to burg.com, they can scroll down and read a chapter if they'd like, to see if they like where it's headed, and they can always click through to Amazon or wherever they'd like. I do have a free video course, a free 4-part online, 4-video online course, mini course we call it, called Selling the GoGiver Way. Mm-hmm. And so it should be up on the site right now.
Oh, I got it. I'll link that below.
Which they can watch if they'd like.
Perfect. Can I do a couple rapid fire, just short answer before we close off? Awesome. Sure. Thank you very much. What's one resource, a book, podcast, person that people should go check out that you're learning from?
I subscribe to Randy Gage's prosperity blog. He also has a podcast and a YouTube channel. So I'm a big believer in really learning prosperity, continuing learning. So there's a few people like Randy, Sharon Lecter, Bob Proctor, who's one of your fellow Canadians. He is in the Toronto area. And people like Ellen Rogan, and there's a number of David Nagel. There's a number of good people that speak specifically on prosperity thinking and mindset. So I'm always studying them and feel that's a really good resource for people to go to.
A positive resource too. I find a lot of these individuals especially we need that more than ever now. What's one lesson that you would tell your younger self?
Oh, that one is probably the easiest of all, because I would say probably to 22, 23-year-old young Bob Burg, I'd say, young Bob Burg, shut up. Stop talking, start listening. You don't know half of what you think you know, and the other half that you're sure you know is so totally wrong, you don't even realize it yet.
It's a good lesson. That's a very good lesson. I think that applies at any age for some people. And then last question: what does success mean for you?
I believe that success is a sense, a genuine feeling of happiness, of peace of mind, in knowing you did the best you can to operate at your highest level. I think that's success.
Very good answer. And lastly, where can people connect with you online? Do you have websites, socials you want to drop?
At Burg.com, if they scroll down to the very bottom of the page, they'll see everything, LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and whatever else.
Right. That's all for today. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of the Success Story Podcast. You can download or stream this podcast wherever podcasts are available, including iTunes, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and many others. You can also watch this podcast on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe and share this podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, and peers. Please leave us a rating on iTunes. It takes about 30 seconds, as it allows other people to find our podcast and lets our amazing guests reach even more people with their message. And remember, any rating is fine as long as it contains 5 stars. I'm Scott Clary from the Success Story Podcast, signing off.